Okay, I'm going to talk about points of information today. I have a lot of things to say, so you might want to write them down.
Don't chew it up. Luke has a bad habit of that, and I'm losing all my pens.
Although if you're
I'd say it's a mediocre.
if you have a photographic memory, like Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston? Really? What a waste of photographic memory.
That's how he knows all his guns. He's like,
No, and that's why it was easy for him to be an actor. Because he would read the script once and know it by heart, and then just get it.
that's awesome.
That'd
what
be
you'd expect from Moses.
an awesome thing to be an actor and have a photographic memory. Really,
Be anything and have a photographic memory.
really nice. I don't
I've got a
know.
photographic memory. I'm just
Not if you were like a photographer.
I have a
who did
photographic
bodies
memory. My
or something.
focus is just way off.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
I want to talk about points of information.
Joke.
Excuse me for being interrupted by you. I want to talk about points of information. I think points of information are too often looked at as just something that's also happening in the debate instead of something that's extremely important. Most of your time in the debate will be spent trying to figure out, well, much more than your speaking time, trying to figure out how to make a good point of information. And I think as we've already seen in our practice debates, it can really enhance your image when you make a point, and the judge goes, yeah, it really, makes your stock rise. And so, it's something that you want to focus on. They're important overall for three different reasons. First, I think they help you develop and advance arguments. I mean, that's what it's all about, developing and advancing your argument. The stylistic parts of it are nice, but, it's all about arguments. Second, you want to be established as the best debater in the room. You want to be established as the best debater in the room. And I think that's why that you take points from the person you think is the best on the other side. I think that's where you try to make points against the person you think is on the best person on the other side, because you want to show the judge that you're the best debater in the room. And you do that because it's the only time in the debate there's a direct confrontation, a direct comparison between the two of you. Boom, 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 boom. And so that provides that comparison, and it can make all the difference. Third, you want to do it so that you remain active in the debate, especially if you're at the top of the table. You need to be really active on the debate, or else everyone is going to forget about you. And the way you do that is through points of information. I'm going to talk about making points first, and then about taking points second. And with each one, I want to give you a number of general guidelines for making and taking, and then I want to have specific kinds of points you can make and kinds of answers that you can make as well. Okay? So let's start by talking about making points. Here's some general guidelines. In no particular order, please interrupt me if I'm not making any sense. Number one, you need to stay active. You need to stay active. The standard is that you should rise at least twice during every speech by a member of the other team. You should rise twice at a maximum. But that doesn't mean you want to be rising constantly over and over again. That could be construed as harassing the speaker. Judges don't like that. I remember at the International Debate Academy 3 years ago, we had a young woman who was dressed in a headscarf who would stand up constantly during the other team's speech and says, "Point of information, sir!" really loud. And she would do it like 4 or 5 times during every speech. And it's like, you need to just chill out a bit. So you want to stay active, but you don't want to harass the speaker. Second, you need to rise no matter what's going on in the debate. If you think you're winning, if you think you're losing, you want to rise for points. If they're making a great argument, then you want to rise for a point of information. If they're making a bad argument, you want to rise for a point of information. Keep rising. Third, here's a sleazy strategy. I don't know, all the Oxford and Cambridge people do it. It's called rising together. Rising together. Okay, let's say that I'm speaking, I'm a member of the opposition, and I say something, and both of you stand up at the same time. Even if I shush you down, the judge is going to think, boy, he must have said something stupid for them to both rise at the same time. In fact, if you're really cooperating, I've seen the debaters at Oxford, all 4 of them will stand up at once. And so all of a sudden, instead of the judge listening to the argument that's being made, you're like, what did he say that was stupid? What did she say that was stupid? Now, of course, you better have something to say if you get called on it. You all stand up. So you may rehearse it, but you don't do this all the time. You may do it once during a debate. And that's it, but it is a strategy. 4, language to use on rising. You could be very direct on that point. You could be supposedly clever. Reality to Mr. Speaker, right? Point of misinformation, right? Point of reality, right? These are the kind of things you can say. And I don't think you should. I don't think you should. Unless you're sure that the judge is playful and doesn't mind and thinks that's cool, I wouldn't do that. Because it can be construed as harassing the speaker, and you don't want to do that. Okay? Rather, I think you don't even need to say anything. You can just rise. And they'll decide to call on you or not without saying anything. I think you can just rise and be there. Like me, I'm kind of a big guy. It's pretty clear when I stand up to make a point of information. If you think you might be smaller in physical stature, so you won't necessarily stand out, I wouldn't worry about that. But you probably don't want to say something smart alecky like, Earth the Gov team, or anything like that. But you can decide whether you want to do it silently or just say point, sir, or on that point. Right? 5, plan for points. Plan for points. As we discussed when we talked about flowing, you want to plan for your points so that you have an idea of what are really good points. I know you're all brilliant, but that doesn't mean that every time you think of something to say, it's going to be brilliant, and you have a limited number of times you're likely to be called on in the debate. So when you are called on, you want to be able to say something good. And you can't necessarily guarantee that the speaker is going to make you stand there and then you can wait until he says something stupid and then you can ask him about that, as we saw in a debate the other day. You want to plan for your points. And you really plan for your points all the time. You plan for your points before you stand up by repeating them over and over again to yourself. So then when they recognize you, don't go, it's like you have rehearsed what your point is going to be. And you just go, boom. And that's the way to do it. 6, short and sweet. A point of information should be a point. A point, is not broad. A point is pointy. And so you want to treat it that way. You want to have it short. 15 seconds is too long. 10 may be too long. Between 5 and 8 is pretty good. And this is one of the things you do when you're rehearsing it. How can I make this point really quick, right, and easy? The judge doesn't want to hear your speech as your point. He wants to hear a very brief, direct point. It also shows you have command over the ideas. You're in command of the ideas. You are familiar with them. They roll off your tongue effortlessly. You speak in an economical way. Short and sweet. 7, timing during the speech. Timing during the speech. Obviously, you don't want to ask questions during protected time, the first and last minute. You need to be aware of that. But also, think about when you will be taken for a point. If the speaker's in the middle of a complex, explanation, they're probably not going to interrupt that to take your point. But if you feel that they're coming to the end of a major point or something like that, it's time to rise, because they're more likely to call on you in the seam between arguments, right? So think about that. 8, look at the judge. Ask the point, and look at the speaker while you ask the point, then immediately turn and look at the judge. Because you want to get the verbal feedback from the judge. Did the judge like it, not like it, buying the answer, not buying the answer, and then that will tell you what to do with it later in the debate. You look at the judge, not at the other team. They will never vote for you. They're never going to admit that you win, that you're awesome. And so look at the judge, they may give you an indication. 9, A point does not have to be a question. A point does not have to be a question. It could be just a statement. This was tried in Holland and failed miserably. It doesn't have to be a question. In fact, it's often better as a statement, an argumentative statement, that they're going to have to answer. 10, no fishing expeditions. A fishing expedition is you take a hook and you put a worm on it, you throw it into the water and you wave it about to see if you're going to catch anything. That's not what's happening in a point of information. You're not, no, I'm not sure what we're going to say. I'll ask about this and see what happens. Right? That's like a fishing expedition. You're looking for something to argue about. For a point of information, you need to know what you're going to say in advance, and then you say it. You have a plan. It's not like, well, won't people be upset by this? And the answer will be, no, they won't. They'll be happy. And then you don't get anything. And this is like a lot of our points of information have been just statements that are the argument of your team. And then what are they going to say? They're going to say no. But if you have it better and you give a statement with a reason, right, then they'll have to respond to the reason. So it needs to be planned, no fishing expeditions. 11, don't ask for long explanations. Don't ask for an explanation. They'll be glad to explain things to you. I don't understand how this works. Well, let me help you out. I know you're not very bright. I'll be glad to explain it to you. Right? You don't want to be receiving a lecture from your opponent about how it works. Now, you might want to point out that they're not explaining their model, right? And that's different. And we're going to talk about that during kinds of points. 12, before you make a point, anticipate how you think they're going to answer it. Think for yourself, what are they going to say? If there's an easy, quick, devastating answer, maybe you don't want to make that point, right? Well, that's exactly our point. Whoa, whoa, whoa. God, I wish I hadn't asked that. Okay? Anticipate before you make a point. 13, follow up on points during your speeches. Follow up on points during your speeches. If you gain an admission from them that's damaging, make sure you or your partner use that argument if possible. This is very important at the lower end of the table, right? You want to be asking points that then you can use during your speech. Remember my point of information, they said this. That proves exactly why their proposal is morally bankrupt. Because, right, and then you can use it in your speech. Okay? Types of points to make. Now, these are pretty simple, so I think you're aware of this, but I've decided why not. Let's have a comprehensive list. Here's the types of points to make. 1, argument preview. Argument preview. This is especially true very early on in the debate. If you're going to make an argument you haven't made yet, you might introduce it by making a point about it. That will set the judge thinking about it. And then when you make it, he or she will have already thought about it briefly. So, oh yeah, here it comes. There's that point of information. Of course, if you do this, an argument preview, make sure that you make that argument. You don't want judges saying things like, well, I think you were really onto something good in your point, and then you never followed up on it. Right? You need to, if you're going to preview an argument, make sure you use it. Second, argument advance. Yes?
I'm sorry, I had a question about making points. This was a little while back. You said rise at least twice. I mean, what happens if you've risen, say, 3 times and you've only been called on once? Should you keep rising? Or?
No, I think, rising means standing up for a point, not accepted.
Okay.
Not accepted. I think you might be able to rise 3 times, but more than that, it starts to look like a little too much.
Okay.
You know, if you have if everybody on this side rises 4 times, that's 16 times during a 7-minute speech.
That's a lot, yeah.
That's a lot. That's a little too much,
actually.
So I think 2 serious rising to make a points are enough. 3 at the most. Yes.
About previewing points, is it better to preview a point, or is it sometimes better to not preview it so they don't have a chance to address it before you get to really make it?
No, in fact, it's to your advantage if they address it before you make it, because then it puts you a whole speech ahead. right? Then you know what their answer is going to be before you make the argument.
Okay.
If their answer is totally devastating, you're like, whoa, I didn't think of that. Maybe I won't make that argument. Or they say, oh, that's how they're going to answer it. Okay, I'll incorporate that into the way I present the argument, which puts you ahead of them.
Okay.
And since you know, in a different form of debate where you would speak twice, you might want to surprise them, but no, you speak once. You get one chance only, and so preview is actually good for you. Armand?
No.
Okay, all right. Second, argument advance. You could think of something to say that advances an argument you've already made. I'm sure you understand that. Third, factual error. I think we had a couple of these. I think, when Lucas rose and says, I think Turkey's already a member of the UN. Oh yeah, I'm talking about the EU. Sorry. Right? That makes you look smart. It makes them look not so smart. And that's good. And if that's all you get out of that, cool. It seems clear that you know more about the topic than they do. Now, if they make a factual error and you rise and they don't call on you, it also makes you look good. Because the judge probably knows that Turkey's a member of the UN, right? You don't have to make that point. So, if they're making a factual error, just the fact that you stood up immediately when they made a factual error shows the judge that you know, even if you don't get called on. 4, contradiction. Now, contradictions are always fun in world's format debate, but they can be really fun if you do them as soon as they make the contradiction, right? One team is saying, and especially between the two teams, and it's even better when it's between the two speakers of the same team, and you phrase it like, the first speaker said A, now you're saying not A, who am I to believe? And that's really just the way you would do it, right? Who's right? Or maybe you guys should have a debate on your own, or, right? One thing I will say is that you have to be very careful following my advice, because I'm really mean as a debater. I'm very mean. And you probably shouldn't be as mean as I am. But sometimes I can't help it, and I let things out of my instruction period. So, but that can be really, really useful, that contradiction thing. And if you rise immediately when they make it, they're going to have a hard time answering it. Why? Well, if they thought it was a contradiction, they wouldn't have committed it. And then they have half a second to figure out how to get out of it. And they'll be, that's not really what my partner meant. And it makes them look really bad and you look really good. And after all, that's what you want. 5, exposing a bad assumption. Exposing a false assumption. And a false assumption should be that Iran wants better relations with the U.S. Right? That the Chinese care about the American economy. Right? That Hillary Clinton's interested in policy as opposed to political success. Right? And you just said, you seem to be assuming X. That's not true. Right? And then they have to explain why it's not true, or then in order to answer it, they have to prove why their assumption is true, which takes them a while and makes them look bad. 6, reveal a flaw in their evidence or example. Reveal a flaw in their evidence or example. A lot of times people are bringing in examples to the best of their knowledge, and to the best of their knowledge might not be entirely correct. And so they might give an example that is either, not analogous, is not the same thing, proves the opposite thing, is a completely different circumstance, took place in a different century, right? These kinds of things. And if you stand up immediately to hit at their example, you're striking at the heart of their proof. And there's something nice about, they say example X, you stand up immediately and then they call on you and they say, yeah, but example X is wrong because it occurred 500 years ago. How does that apply to today's situation? And then it shows like you're really in it. 7, this is especially if you're at the bottom of the table, get them to say something to set up a future argument. get them to say something that will help set up your future argument. You know, and the second teams, what your extension argument is going to be. So, especially if you're the whip speaker, figure out what you can get them to say that might support your argument. Now, obviously you're trying to get them to stick their foot in their mouth, so you can't be too obvious. You can't say, won't people resist this? They'll say no. Right? Don't say, won't this cost a lot of money? They'll say no. Instead of saying, won't this cost a lot of money, why don't you make a point like, this is going to take a vast administrative infrastructure. Are you sure that that can be easily created? And they'll say, yes, it can be. And then you go, then your argument is, that's going to cost a lot of money. Right? Oh, they're going to create this vast administrative infrastructure in the bat of an eye, and that's going to take a lot of resources and a lot of time. See what I mean? So try to say the opposite. You know, you go to the opposite direction as to what they think you're going to do, and they'll walk right into your fist. 8. Reveal inadequate specification. This is especially true of the first government team. First government team is arguing for the legalization of marijuana. And they say, yep, we're going to make marijuana legal. You can buy it, use it, no prosecution. Then they go on. There's probably a lot more to it than that. Right? Are they going to have age restrictions? Does it take a license to produce it? Will it be taxed? Will it be available for retail sale or only what people grow themselves? And you know what happens if you make the arguments about what? You're going to have kids buying pot and smoking it in public and you can't stop them? They go, no, of course. This will only be for people above 18. You want to know this kind of stuff beforehand, right? And it looks good when you're showing how that their model is vague. Then later on, when you complain about their model as being vague, you've got some, you know, this model is so vague. We tried to ask a point of information about it, and it's still vague. Right? It sounds better than like later on you're going, well, we don't really know what they're proposing, and we're not really sure what they're doing. Right? It gives a lot more credence to the fact that they're vague because you warned about it earlier. 9. You probably don't want to do this, but oh well, okay. Ask them a leading question when time allocation is bad. Right? When you think their time allocation is not going too well, like they're not getting to their new argument right away, stand up and ask them a leading question like, can you explain to me how this would work if this, that, and the other were true? Yes, well, let me explain that to you. I can do that. Now, while I'm explaining it to you, it's moving from a time allocation problem to rapidly becoming a time allocation disaster. Right? So that's the one time you would ask like a leading question, an open sort of question that invites them to talk.
Then they'll spend like a minute plus.
Maybe, yeah, and then they don't get to their new argument at all and they are ranked 4th.
Right.
Okay. So we're done there. We see making a point, general guidelines, and specific kinds of points to make. Now let's talk about responding to a point. Taking them, responding to them. General guidelines. 1, how to dismiss points. There's polite, no thank you. There's brutal, sit down, denied. Right? Then there's verbal and nonverbal. I think this is best. It doesn't interrupt your speech. Although I noticed that some of you in practice, they stand up and you stop talking, go like this, and go, okay, now, next I want to say, and you're interrupted even though you're non-verbally declining their point. So that seems like not very productive. I think just keep on going and sit them down. Second, when to take them. You decide when to take them. After I get done, I'm going to make 3 big points in my speech. After the first one, I'll take a point. After the second one, I'll take a point, and that's it. I don't care when they stand up. Right? They better be standing up when I'm ready to give them, or else that ain't going to happen. Right? And if you had to take a point, an extra point later on to get to your 2, that's fine. You can work that out. But make it serve your purpose and punctuate your speech instead of interrupting your speech. Yes.
I was gonna say, is it ever appropriate to actually say like I'll take points at the end of this and this, or no?
No, that's for them to figure out. You own the floor. You don't need to be so nice to them.
If you don't get someone, if people don't ask points, like, and I know probably people will, but if
Will.
they don't, then like you won't get punished.
No, if they're not rising, you
If
can't
they ask
call
like
them.
2 and you deny both of them, is that like your problem or theirs?
I think that's pretty much their point. And if they're not rising, you could say, "I'm so pleased that the members of the opposition agree with me so much they have no points to make." Excellent. Let's go on. All right. Don't be afraid to say that.
Do that after they close the.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do that. When to take them, flow of the speech, that's 3. I already talked about that. Do it in the seams between your arguments. 4, how many to take, I already talked about that. 2, minimum. 3, maximum. 5, who to take them from. Courage or cowardice. And well, I know that Sam is not very together and doesn't make good points, so I always call on him, right? Because I'm a coward. Because I don't want to call on Joe. He's going to whack me, right, with a rough one. So, you decide. I mean, if you're afraid of them, then protect. If you're afraid of them and fear your own inadequacies and bad performance, take points from who you perceive to be the weakest of your opponents. If you want to show that, I'm number 1, right, then call on the strongest of your opponents when they stand up. 6, short answers. You want to have short answers. You don't want to waste your time dealing with their points. And we've had quite a bit of problem with this in our practice debates, of people saying things like, well, yes, I'm not really a historian, but it seems to me that, now I'm slowly thinking of an answer, and now I'm going to give that answer. Right? You need to do it faster than that. I know it's easy to say, get right to the point and answer them quickly. It's not easy to do. Right? How much time do you have to figure out an answer? Less than a second to figure out how to answer it. And you need to be right. You need to not make a critical mistake. Sure, anybody from Turkey who wants to come on down into Iraq, let's bring them on. Right? You have to think about that before you say them. Short answers. 7, offensive answers. Answers that score points for you. Defensive answer. They make the point. This is going to cost a lot of money, isn't it? Well, it won't really cost that much, and I'm sure we can find the money somewhere. Defensive answer. Offensive answer. No, actually, when you look at the whole situation, we're going to save money. In fact, sir, you have just named another reason why the government case why this motion should pass. Right? You want to make, it doesn't, don't say the Chinese won't mind, say they'll like it. Right? Don't say that parents will be opposed. Parents will like it but then you have to have a reason. Right? You can't just say you have to have a reason. But whenever possible, you want to be offensive. 8, no follow-up. No follow-up. They'll want to ask you a follow-up point. You say, excuse me, sir, I think you're out of order. Please be seated. Right, and it shows that they're not familiar with the format, don't know what they're doing. And I make sure to put this one in because I was in a public debate and I was so shocked by the absurd answer that the person gave. And I said, are you kidding me? Are you really saying this? He said, you're out of order. And I went, I should have just let him say something incredibly stupid. And then gone, whoa, we're going to be talking about that later in the day. Okay, no follow-up. 9, never ask for a repeat. I'm sorry, I'm not very smart. I didn't really understand my question. Could you please give it to me again, thus wasting an incredible time in my speech and making me look stupid. Trust yourself. If you didn't understand what their point was, odds are the judge didn't understand what their point is either. Right? I'm sorry, sir. I'll take another point from you next time. Please be comprehensible. If I knew what your point was, I'd answer it. Please sit down and we'll try again later. Right? And then the judge will go, yeah, right? That judge didn't understand the question, didn't know what it meant. Right? So trust yourself. Don't think that you're wrong. If you don't understand, it's not necessarily your fault. This is a communication activity. They have to be responsible for communicating clearly. 10, look at the judge. Look at them, take the point, and immediately there's this pivot moment. Sam makes a point, I look at him, and as I turn my head to the judge, then I give the answer. It's that pivoting point when I'm figuring out what my answer is. And generally, I will try to smile. Well. Right? Because, oh yeah, I'm ready to answer this. But when he asks the point, you go like, right? He asks the point, you go, yeah, thank you. You're wrong, dude. Then that looks better. Then look right at the judge and tell the judge. And then the judge will give you verbal feedback. I like it, I don't like it, I don't understand it, whatever. You need to do that. 11. Follow up on points during a speech. Follow up on points during a speech. Just because the other side made a point doesn't mean that you can't use their point to promote your argument. Right? You can construe the point that they made as being supportive of your argument. Even the points of information by the opposition show that we're right on this issue when they said. Okay? Types of responses. 1. Short answer. Don't be afraid. No. Yes. If they ask a really simplistic question, don't be afraid to say no. Isn't it true that all the citizens of Iran hate the United States? No. And then just go on with your speech. Right? And this is something you can do when they're just stating an argument for their side, especially one that's already been made in the debate. You go, no, we've already answered that. Just move on. 2, some of these now will be kind of outs. Like, what do you do if you're not really sure how to answer it? This is one possible out, but it can be dangerous. You can say, especially if it's something that hasn't been introduced in the debate, you can say, at this point in the debate, that's irrelevant. At this point in the debate, that's irrelevant. What you're really saying is, look, you make an argument about this and we'll deal with it. Right? It's irrelevant. 3rd, question unclear. I'm sorry, sir, your question is unclear. And then move on. 4th, already answered. And say where. I already answered this on our second major argument. My partner already answered this in the last speech. Right, the other one is, I'm coming to that, number 8. 5, common knowledge. Common knowledge. I thought that would be common knowledge. Let me help you. Dogs have 4 legs.
But then would you answer that? Would you just say, oh, I was
yeah, that's common knowledge. Let me help you.
Okay. So just like Suter.
It's like I understand that you're, intellectually disadvantaged,
Right,
so let me help you.
But that's not really an escape.
No, that's not an escape.
Yeah.
I'll tell you which one's an escape.
Okay.
Right? Irrelevance is an escape. 6, this is my favorite escape. Attack the assumption behind the point.
Nice.
You're not sure how to answer the point, but you understand the assumption it's based on, and you can attack the assumption behind it. I'll just give you an example. I was in a debate about returning artifacts to their place of origin, like the Elgin marbles and a lot of stuff that's been looted during colonialism should be returned. Yeah. And so somebody rose for a point, because one of the examples we used was Ethiopian manuscripts had been plundered by the British, and the entire history of Ethiopian civilization was stolen from them, and the books were never photoed, never copied, so they don't know. And so the point was, well, do you think Ethiopia is going to be able to take care of these fragile documents and store them appropriately for safekeeping and display them for people? What am I going to say? I'm sure Ethiopia has a great museum system. It's high tech. It's great. I couldn't really say that, right? So I said, well, the assumption behind your point, sir, is that I could steal your television and then argue that you don't know how to take care of it, so it's okay. We reject that as being morally bankrupt. And so it also makes them look bad.
Yeah.
Right? So instead of me saying, I think Ethiopia has great museums, instead I say, you would legitimize theft based on the care standard. Right? So I think that's my favorite out. Because not only do you get away without answering a question you probably can't answer, but it seems offensive.
Yeah. That's a good one.
7, easy to answer. That's easy. If you need an extra moment to think of what to say, this is also an out. Of course, you better have an answer. But what you need is an extra moment. Sir, that's easy to answer. There's a distinction between freedom and liberty that, you know what I mean? So it gives you that extra moment. 8, I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. And then when you do come, but this is not an escape. You can't just say, I'll come to that later, and then when you don't, it makes you look really bad. We say, I'm coming to that, and then when you get to it, you say, and that answers the gentleman's point. Right, so you were planning, you are coming to that, you will answer it, but all in good time, sweetie, all in good time, as the witch says in the Wizard of Oz. 9, turn it. Turn it. I said this before on offense, I'm going to say it again. You think it's a problem, we think it's another reason why we win. Right? You think that, we don't want Bill Clinton to be the first lady. No, we don't want to have another Clinton dynasty. I would love to have another Clinton dynasty at this point. I think it would be great if America went back to the successes and the prosperity and the confidence it had during the Clinton years. Thank you. Right? So that, and we don't lose money, we save money, we don't offend the Chinese, and I want to say that twice because it's important. That's what I have on my checklist for points of information. Okay, any questions? You asked questions during it, so that was good.
I have a question.
Yeah,
How long?
I'll be glad to share with you for a slight fee where I buy my swanky shirts, and I'll do that later. Yes,
Never mind then.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, Libby.
How long should you wait to be addressed? Whether you could keep standing, take the point, or be?
That's a really good question. Don't leave people standing.
What if I'm saying, what if you're standing?
Okay, I just want to handle it comprehensively. Don't leave people standing. If they're standing, sit them down.
Okay.
Or if you'll say, the thing Sam does is not so bad. I'll take your point in a moment, right? Then make sure that it's a very short period of time to get them. Don't leave them standing there a long time, and don't say something really stupid just before they, so that then, and if they do what you do. On the other hand, if they don't recognize you and you stand there for a while, after 15 seconds, I would shrug my shoulders and sit down.
Alright, because Tien I was standing for a while, and he kept looking at me and talking, and I'm just kind of standing there, and I really wanted to make the point, and I was like, what record do you have? Because I know he didn't know, so I really wanted to make that point, so should I have just let it go and been like... No,
I think he said to you, didn't you? I seem to remember him saying, I'll take your point in a moment, and then he kept talking.
I don't think he did. I think he just kept looking at me, and I didn't know if...
Yeah.
And then,
so should
I just sit down?
I would sit down after 10 or 15 seconds. I'd sit down. Wow, that was
Good
really
call.
good.
That was.
Alright, cool.
That was
You've been annoying me all day.
Yeah, that's probably the same fly that was bothering me.
Yeah.
What else?
If
I use my tongue usually. Yes, sir.
since it's good to wait during the transitions to take their points, if they don't ask during your transition though, and they ask during the middle of the point and you don't actually address it, do you look bad if it seems that you're not taking it?
As long as you take two, that's fine.
Okay, 'cause
If they don't rise enough
Mhm.
at the right times, that's their problem.
Okay.
And then, you can always then take one, even if you're in an explanation in the last couple minutes of your speech and say, yeah, I'll take your point in a moment, and then finish up, then take it right away.
Mhm.
Then you'll have two and you'll be okay.
I just
Right?
don't leave
But generally, you get punished, if you don't rise enough,
Right.
if you're not assertive about it, you get punished.
Right.
So if they're not rising, you're not likely to be punished for not taking up points.
Mhm.
And, if it's a problem, you can say what I suggested is, I'm glad the other side of the bench agrees with me so much they have no points to me. Then it's clear to everyone whose problem it is, not yours. Okay? Great. All right, I'm going to turn the...
Oh, you were filming this?
Yeah.
Not a bad idea.
No.
Because people obviously missed the lecture, so.
Yeah. Okay. Next. Oh, and finally, there's the kind of motion that you don't get in Worlds, but you do get in British parliamentary debate, the open motion. This House would unlock the doors. This House would set sail and never come back. This House believes the cup is half full. This House, and then it's the very general thing that you can come up with whatever you want. Yeah, we're killing ourselves with amusement, right? And so, you never know what's going to happen. You have no idea what the first government's going to say, right? And these used to be popular in British parliamentary debate. There's a couple of tournaments that still use them, but not in the world style at all. The world style, they had a big showdown with the open topic people and a long debate at a council meeting, and they voted that they were going to use what are called tight topics. This House would ban elective cosmetic surgery. You know what that's about. Not, this House believes that looking good is all that matters. That's open motion. Okay? I want to talk about how to build a single point. I want to talk about how to build a single point, and this is how you should build your new arguments. Wherever you are, first gov, first op, whoever's presenting a new argument, you should do it this way. And I just use the model of a paragraph. You all know how to write paragraphs, then you should be all set. Okay? You have a title. Just like you would have a title sentence. Right? That one title, a complete thought, flashy, splashy language that encapsulates your argument in one sentence. Right? That would be your title. Okay? Next, you would explain what is meant by this. You would give the logic, the reasoning behind it. Okay? A couple of sentences. Next, you got to give some evidence. Generally, these are examples, either current events or historical. They could be opinions from important people. They could be references to social phenomena. They could be some scientific finding that you're familiar with. They could be your personal experience. There could be a story. You could tell a very short story about an underage size 0 model, right, who was victimized by the fashion industry. There are lots of different things that you can use. But you got to have them, and this is, so far in the debates we've seen, this is the biggest weakness right here. Right? Everybody says Hillary's bad, but won't give specific examples of why she's bad.
I don't understand how a personal anecdote would factor in. It's like...
Well, let me tell you about my experience as a 0-size model. Right? I felt I was degraded. And, no. If you can give, and I'll tell you quite honestly, this is powerful shit. I was abused by my parents. And it has
Really?
really,
People really do that?
well, you don't, if it's true, you don't make stuff up. You don't lie in the debate.
Okay.
Okay, this is important. Unless you no longer want to represent the University of Vermont, you shouldn't lie. But if you could say, you know, yeah, when I lost my job, I felt like I was worthless, like I couldn't provide for my family.
Okay.
It was really stressful.
Yeah.
And what's someone going to say? Oh yeah, right. Who cares about you? It's like undeniable, right? If you have a debate about eating disorders and one of the speakers says, you know, she's had a struggle with bulimia, the whole room like, whoa. All right, so you must only do it if it's true.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm saying. I think you need 3. I think you need 3. You don't need 1, you need 3. And this will also fill up your speech. Right? We have 3 examples. One's a current event, one's a scientific theory you knew about, one's a personal example. Right? One's a statistic, 2 are current events. See what I mean? Right? And I mean, with Hillary, it would be, you know, you would look at our list up here, you know, you would try to find stuff, and then the healthcare in the 90s, the healthcare today, right? And you could, and this is why you need this list, right? You need this. You need to work on this list during prep, right? And you're not sure where you're going to put all this stuff, but when you start to write this, you'll figure out what's going on, and you may think of one during the debate, and you can insert it. But you really need that. Next, impact. So what? So why is this important? What does this mean? What's the bottom line here? And then you need that little exit summary I talked about. Well, exit summary I talked about. Okay, so what we've seen here is that the unemployment caused by the government proposal is going to shatter the lives of hundreds of thousands of families. And that's an excellent reason why we should oppose this motion. Our second argument is, all right, so that's the way, it's just like a paragraph. Title, explanation, evidence, impact, summary. Right, because in the paragraph you have a title sentence and a summary sentence. And then the first couple of sentences are usually explanation of the logic behind that paragraph. And then there are specific facts that bear it out. This evidence thing is really important because you are able to translate your opinions into facts. You can translate your opinions into facts. You know, I have this argument, yeah, but you know what? Reality proves my argument. History proves my argument. Science proves my argument. My personal experience proves this argument. You know, Mother Teresa's experience proves this argument. Okay? All right, so specific structure. Let's look at the bottom of page 2, and then we're done. Let's say you're the first gov. Introduction, use framing. Why this issue comes before us. It's very timely that we discuss it. Let's define the terms. If you need to give a model because it's a policy motion, you would introduce it at that point, right after the definitions. Preview 2 or 3 major points. Right, saying your partner will handle the last one. Then do them. Then have your conclusion. And that's it. Okay, so those are some pieces of advice for case building. Questions? Except it's so hot. But you know what? As a fat boy who sweats a lot, I believe I teach better when I'm hot.
Yeah.
I'm sweating. Yeah, because the juices start flowing.
Would you like a piece of 88% dark chocolate?
Okay.
Fabulous.
Man.
That's the word. Okay? All right, thanks.
Or doesn't.
We will not have a practice debate tonight.
Yeah,
The people who wanted didn't show up, so.